Can you
Okay,
hear me now?
now I hear you. Yes.
Okay, good. So if you have a guest comes for Shabbat and they bring you a food gift, a purchased one, and you know they keep Shabbat, uh, maybe you're not on the exact level that I do, so to
Oh,
speak.
they're,
Um,
they're not
and
on the high level of tzaddikim like we are. Okay.
not no, it's just it's unknown. It's
Not
unknown.
everyone
They
can
may be
achieve. Not everyone can achieve our level of
they could
perfection.
be higher. They could be higher. It's just not known. Oftentimes, I give it away. I set aside. A little worried about insulting somebody. You know.
Mhm.
Uh, any interesting thoughts on that?
You're talking about food which they prepared themselves in their home,
Actually, food that they prepared is actually more relevant because otherwise you could just check the hashgacha.
right? If it's food which they prepared themselves, uh, well, once again, we once again, I have the problem of having to tell the truth. And as unpleasant as the truth is, here goes. You are concerned about whether or not the food is kosher or kosher according to certain opinions, according to certain standards which you follow. I must admit, and as I've said in the past on a number of occasions, I've tried unsuccessfully to convince the Talmidim that you, like me, should not care whether or not the food is kosher. That's not an interesting question. It doesn't interest me whether the food is kosher or not. There's another question which is far more interesting and far more important to me, namely, is it permitted or prohibited to eat the food? That's an important question. And the answers to these two questions do not necessarily square with each other. There are plenty of examples throughout the Shulchan Aruch where we know definitively, without a doubt, that there's a prohibited food before us, but we're still allowed to eat it. These are two separate questions. And as far as the specific issue which you raise, the Shulchan Aruch and all the principal poskim are quite clear. Someone, a Jewish person who is Shomer Shabbat, they don't light fires on Shabbat and they don't cook on Shabbat and so forth and so on. Uh, that person has ne'emanut, reliability, trustworthiness, b'chol haTorah kula, throughout the length and breadth of Torah. If that person says the garment is free of shatnez, well, it is now permitted to wear that garment. Is it in fact true that the garment is free of shatnez? Well, maybe the Torah observant person who told me that it's free of shatnez made a mistake. Of course, it's possible for there to be a mistake, uh, but I'm allowed halachically to rely upon the statement that the garment is free of shatnez and I can wear it. Similarly, with food, if the person said the food is kosher, then that's fine. Now the question arises, in order for all of this to work, and the underlying principle is Eid Ne'aman, Eid Echad Ne'aman. Uh, if we're not talking about a criminal case before the Bet Din, if we're not talking about a financial case before the Beit Din, or if we're not talking about a ritual situation like a chuppah, which requires witnesses, if we're not talking about a ritual requirement for witnesses like at a chuppah, and we're not talking about a financial or criminal case before a Beit Din, if we're only talking about establishing the facts, Eid Echad, a single witness, is acceptable, trustworthy, and reliable. We need two witnesses only if it's a ritual matter. like a chuppah, or if it's a criminal case or a financial case before the bet din, before the bezdin. Now the question arises: what exactly is edus? Does edus require the witness to speak and say this garment is free of shatnez, or say something that indicates that, and we rely upon the statement? Is the person required to say this is kosher, or are actions, is behavior sufficient to rely upon? Regarding this, all the big name poskim agree that as far as aid echad is concerned, we don't need a speech to rely upon. Behavior is enough. If we see the Shomer Shabbos person eating the food, that's like a statement that it's kosher. We don't expect him or her to actually say the words. Um, so the very fact that they offer it to you to eat, well, that's a behavior which is saying that it's kosher, and therefore you are allowed to eat it. So that's the simple bottom line answer to your question. You're allowed to eat it. Now, let me make a further comment, which you did not exactly ask about, but which is relevant in this case. The poskim led by the Shach distinguish between the responsibilities of the host and the responsibilities of the guest. From the guest's point of view, the person receiving the food. There are two possibilities. Either the person receiving the food has no special chumrot, no special strict practices above and beyond the normal practices of kashrut, in which case it's correct to rely upon the trustworthiness and reliability of the host or whoever is giving you the food. Right, host guest relationship is a little bit imprecise because in the specific case you mentioned, you're the host and it's the guest who's providing the food. But what I'm really talking about is the provider of the food and the recipient of the food, which doesn't always correspond with the guest host, obviously. Now, from the host's point of view, from the point of view of the person providing the food, if the person providing the food knows that the recipient has chumrot, strict practices above and beyond what's normal in the community, then it's the responsibility of the provider of the food to make sure that those stricter practices are fulfilled. If the provider does not know about these stricter practices, there's no reason for the provider of the food to assume that the recipient of the food requires anything beyond the normal standards of kashrus and the principles of ne'amanut, reliability, trustworthiness, which we've outlined, would apply. Okay, is that enough about that case?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Are there other questions which the participants would like to pose before we get into today's subject? Today's subject
Yeah,
is fasting, because tomorrow's a fast day.
if on the topic of the host and guest providing, if the host knows that the guest or the recipient has a stricter practice, but either it was out of their control or they forgot, is there still ne'emanut, and the recipient is allowed to go with their kashrut?
The provider of the food knows that the recipient is following such and such a strict practice, but forgot.
Either forgot or it was out of their control, or a guest showed up unexpectedly, or some version of something where it wasn't like, I'm just trying to feed you something that you don't eat.
As long as the provider of the food is not trying to machshil, cause the recipient of the food to violate his or her principles, all is well. Okay. We have other issues to talk about before we come to fasting. Okay.
Endless.
Yeah. Now I'm pretty good at this. Oh, but no, I don't have it here. Okay. I click over here and I click
Oh, I do have a question, but I don't want to disrupt your
yes. Yes, what's the question while I'm clicking away or trying to find the sources? What do you want to
Bir Birkat Hamazon Katan. I don't know if that's the proper phrase.
Katsar.
Katsar. Like I have one in my Siddur. I can take a picture and put it in the chat. It starts Brich Rachmana, then it goes to Node, then it goes to Rachem, Uvnei Yerushalayim, and then it seems like it was a fourth. Yeah, there's a fourth. And
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a time when it seems like the preferred one is the longer one. I think. I
Yeah,
don't.
sure. Yeah, sure. But if there's some difficulty in reciting the longer, the normal standard Birkat Hamazon, one can indeed be Yotzei Yedei Chava. One can fulfill the mitzvah with the short version.
All right.
There's a Rav Abadi, lives today in Bayit Vagan. He was for many years Talmud Muvhak, the principal disciple of Rav Aaron Kotler, the founder of the great yeshiva in Lakewood, and he has published on his internet site. You can download a card which fits into your wallet or something, and you have the nusach. You have the thing printed there. So if you want a convenient printed version, Rav Abadi's internet site provides that.
But when circumstances call for it, it's a complete and full Birkat
It's
Hamazon.
okay. It's okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, now we turn to fasting. I'm going to try again to click. I think now it's going to work. Voila. Tzom, fasting. The first question we want to deal with is the exemption from fasting. Right, tomorrow's a fast day. And the rules we're going to talk about today do not have to do with Yom Kippur. This is all the other fast days, but not Yom Kippur. As far as the fast day tomorrow, or the other minor fasts as they're called, we want to talk first about who's exempt because they're choleh, sick people. Let's first see what the Shulchan Aruch says, and then we'll see how to apply the definition of illness to decide who is exempt and who is obligated to fast. It says in the Shulchan Aruch, these are the words of Shulchan Aruch, Chaya kol shloshim yom, a woman who has given birth and is within 30 days after giving birth, v'chein, chola, shehu tzarich lechol, and similarly, any other sick person, woman after giving birth is usually not something. A woman can be sick, but usually after giving birth, we're talking about a healthy woman, but nonetheless, she is weak. A woman who has given birth, or any sick person, shehu tzarich lechol, any sick person who needs to eat, ein tzarich omed, we do not require any evaluation of the patient. We don't have to ask, does he or she really need it? There's no evaluation made. The person says, I am sick, or the questioner says, so-and-so is sick. That's enough. Those words are enough, and that person is allowed to eat. We don't wait. Rather, we feed that person right away. The whole fast, we're not talking about Yom Kippur, the whole fast tomorrow, beginning to end, is d'Rabbanan, and Chazal, when they instituted the fast tomorrow, did not intend it to apply to sick people. And Shulchan Aruch says flat out, Ein tzarich omed, there's no evaluation required to determine whether or not the person is sick. There are no standards here. Anyone who claims to be sick or anyone who is claimed to be sick eats. The Rambam adds The Ashkenaz pasuk adds, Mihu, however, and he's speaking specifically about sick people. This note is attached to this paragraph in the Shulchan Aruch. Noagim letanot kol zman she'ein lo tzar gadol. Nonetheless, the minhag is, not the halachic requirement, nonetheless, the minhag is to fast even if you are sick, unless you have tsar gadol. Someone who has tsar gadol, someone who is suffering a lot, if someone's suffering a lot, well, that could be a dangerous illness, and surely we will not eat. Even though there is this minhag for people who are only mildly ill, namely, they're not suffering a lot, even though there's a minhag for them to fast, nonetheless, hamekel lo hifsid, anyone who ignores this stricter minhag and eats anyway, even though he or she is only a little bit sick, lo hifsid, you don't lose any spiritual value here. Bottom line, eating and drinking tomorrow on the fast day is, as far as halacha is concerned, to be decided leniently, permissively for anyone who is sick or who is claimed to be sick. There's a minhag that if it's not a lot of discomfort involved, there's a minhag to fast anyway. But those who ignore this stricter minhag and eat anyway, lo hifsid, you're not losing any of the spiritual value. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Now, of course, the word chole itself, what constitutes sick? When is someone entitled to say, I am sick? Or when is it correct to say, so-and-so is sick? The Mishnah Brura says, chole, the meaning of the word chole, Rotzelomar, the meaning of the word is, hu chalush v'chash begufo. There's some weakness. There's some weakness. Someone who has some weakness and therefore is worried about the condition of his or her body. Anyone who has some weakness and therefore is concerned about the condition of his or her body, that's someone who's sick, af al pi she'ein bo sakana, even though it's perfectly clear that there's no danger involved and the person's not going to die, but just feels weak. Machlinato, you feed him. The vast categories of people who more or less automatically fit into this category. Anyone over a certain age, older people over a certain age, are going to feel weaker. Oh, I remember when I was 20 years old, I had more strength than I have now. I remember when I was 20 years old, all the things I could do. Well, there's some weakness there. And so all categories of people fit into this, exempt from the fast. If it's not serious weakness, there's a minhag to fast anyway, but that minhag is very easily set aside, as the Ramah says in the Shulchan Aruch. Furthermore, the Mishnah Brura says, "Hamekel lo hifsid." If you ignore the stricter minhag to refrain from eating and you eat anyway, b'kol shekain b'adam chalush hu cholesh ein bo sakana ein kedai lachmir. This is a halacha regarding which it's not worthwhile from the spiritual point of view. There's no spiritual benefit in being strict on this halacha. If there's some suffix, if there's some doubt, you think you're sick or you think someone else is sick, well, this is not an area which calls for any strictness at all. Ein kedai lachmir, it is not worthwhile being strict. Now, as you probably know, the Aruch HaShulchan is one of my favorite svarim, and he formulates the principle very simply. Kol bal mechush, anyone who feels any discomfort. Mechush, headache, throat ache, well, whatever it is that aches, anyone who feels some discomfort, im einam me'amichushim she'tanit kasher lehem, well, some discomfort will be made worse by fasting. If the discomfort, the headache, the stomach ache, or whatever it is, the backache, if whatever it is going to be exasperated, is going to be made worse by fasting, then you should not fast. But some mechushim, some discomfort, fasting or not fasting, might not change anything. And if it's not going to change anything, then it's correct to fast. So here the Aruch HaShulchan gives us a good rule in defining what constitutes discomfort as far as the fast day is concerned. Discomfort which permits eating is discomfort which can be ameliorated, can be improved if you eat and drink. And in general, every case is different, of course, but in general, this leniency is going to apply. Uberot umenikot, pregnant women and nursing mothers, lo yit anu b'chol shloshet atzomot levad mitisha b'av. Pregnant women and nursing mothers should not fast at all. Pregnant women and nursing mothers are a whole category of people who experience weakness, and they should not fast at all, except in Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is a case which we're going to put aside and discuss in greater detail before Tisha B'Av comes. The women out there, he wrote this a little over 100 years ago in Lithuania in the beginning of the 20th century. Women out there who are pregnant and nursing, if they are healthy, seem to be fasting anyway, even though I just said they're exempt. The minhag is acceptable. Ta'ani kvuot l'chol Yisrael rashot la'achmir. People are entitled to be strict and refrain from eating, even though it is permitted to break the fast. In all the cases we've discussed up till now, where it is permitted to eat, it is also permitted to fast. In general, I would say that someone who is mahmir, above and beyond what halacha requires, is just foolish, and advise a person not to be strict above and beyond what halacha requires. As far as fast days are concerned, even though someone is exempt from the fast, if the person chooses to fast, that's that's an acceptable chumrah which you can accept upon yourself. But if there's a lot of discomfort, asur len lachmi, if there's a lot of discomfort, you really shouldn't be strict at all. Even though there's no danger to the pregnant woman or the nursing mother, even though there's no danger to the fetus or to the child that's being nursed, still, if there's a lot of discomfort, one should not be machmir. So the women who are pregnant and nursing are permitted to be machmir if there's not a lot of discomforts. Similarly, and here comes his big idea, his big formulation of the principle, chalush begufo, lo yachmir alav letanot levad mitisha b'av. Anyone who experiences weakness should not be strict and should not fast aside from Tisha B'Av, and we'll deal with Tisha B'Av in greater detail when it comes closer. What do we understand up till this point? That is a simple, straightforward exemption from fasting for those who are sick, those who are weak, those who are experiencing any form of discomfort where their condition will be improved. They'll feel better if they eat and drink. They'll feel stronger if they eat and drink. Chai Adam, 19th century Lithuania. מקום מקום, אף הצריך לאכול לא יתענג עצמו בבשר ויין. Since it's a fast day, and the Jewish people are united in their fast because of the tzarot, because of the troubles that the Jewish people suffer. If you are permitted to eat and drink on a fast day, well, then you should eat and drink, but not delicacies, not basar v'yayin. Well, meat and wine might or might not be your idea of delicacies. It really doesn't matter. The point is, rak kafi mashet tzarich. When you eat and drink, you should minimize not the quantities of eating and drinking. You eat and drink normal quantities, but simple foods and not delicacies. The Mishnah Brura says, אם הוא חולה שאין בו סכנה, בוודאי פטור מלהתענות, ואסור להחמיר לעצמו. This idea of the Aruch HaShulchan, that one should not be strict, and one should indeed eat and drink. This is an idea which is not unique to the Aruch HaShulchan. This is an idea which is accepted by the Mishnah Brura, and therefore, not surprisingly, agreed to by all the big name poskim. Let's go one step further in the more recent poskim. Reb Moshe Feinstein in the Igros Moshe. He's talking about someone who goes to work on the fast day. He or she is, I don't care, a computer programmer, an accountant, a plumber, whatever work is that this person has, the person goes to work on the fast day. And indeed, there's no prohibition to work on fast days, and most people do. I mean, you have to make a living, right? Now, sometimes people would be able to fast quite well if they took the day off and just rested and relaxed at home. But if they go to work, especially if the work involves more physical activity, but even the simplest office job, if someone goes to work, that on a fast day might make the person feel weak and lead to a leniency. The question then is, should you go to work where you know that going to work is likely to lead you into a situation where you're going to become weak and eat and drink? Or should you take the day off and rest and relax at home? Im nechlash be'emtza avodato, if you feel weak in the course of the day while you're working, whether it's an office job or a manual labor, it doesn't matter. אם היא חולשה יותר מדרך בני אדם כשמתענים, everyone fasts experiences some weakness. Well, if the weakness you experience because you are working is greater, your weakness is greater than you would feel at home, just relaxing the whole day, that's called sick, and the rule of fasting does not apply. And this is true even on Tisha B'Av. Therefore, there's no reason to avoid going to work on the fast day. It doesn't matter whether you are a ganenet, a teacher, a office worker, an accountant, a bricklayer, or a plumber. Doesn't matter what the work is. If in the course of your work you've experienced weakness beyond what you would normally experience. Well, just about everyone feels some weakness in the course of a fast day. If it's anything more than that, you're choleh, you eat and drink and continue your work. Mishu chalush b'tivo, yoter mishar b'nei adam, someone who is by nature weaker than other people. Some people have a weak constitution. Those people also have the status of being sick, but they don't fast at all. Another vast category of people who are simply exempt from the fast, those who, in general, experience weakness. It's correct to go to work, even though you know that you're going to experience weakness and you'll eat and drink in the middle of the workday, or maybe at the beginning of the workday. כיוון שהיא מלאכת שמיים, אף שבאם לא היה עובד, היה יכול להתענות כשעובד אפשר שיחלש, even though you know full well that if you would stay at home and relax, you wouldn't feel weaker than normal, and you would fast. Well, no reason to stay home and relax. Just go to work. And if you feel weak, you'll eat and drink. Simple things, but not delicacies. Rav Elyashiv is quoted as having said, "Chol she'ein bo sakana im rotzeh, yesh inyan b'zeh sheyita ad hatzorayim." It is assuming that there's no threat to life here, assuming that then of course even on Yom Kippur you would eat, assuming there's no threat to life, it would be nice, it would be a good idea if you could hold out at least until mincha time, so you can daven mincha with the extra paragraph of Anenu b'yom tzom ta'anitenu, that extra paragraph in mincha on the afternoon of the fast day can be added only by people who are fasting. Anenu b'yom tzom ta'anitenu. We ask God to answer, to respond to our prayers on our fast day. Well, only people who are fasting should add that paragraph. So if you're close to mincha time when you feel weak, it's nice, it's advisable. That's a nice idea to hold out a little bit longer so you can daven mincha, which probably means davening in private, because you probably don't have a convenient minyan to daven mincha at that time. But daven mincha, add the paragraph of Anenu, and then eat and drink. Okay, up to this point, we've covered the basic principles of exemption from fasting. Now I want to deal with specific cases. There are people, and I am one of them, who are caffeine junkies. Caffeine is an addicting substance, and there are some of us who are habituated to it. Now, of course, if you are habituated to caffeine or anything else, then if you don't get your daily fix, you begin to feel bad. That's called withdrawal symptoms. You experience headache, maybe nausea, maybe stomach ache, maybe general aches and pains, weakness. Well, as the time goes on, longer and longer, when you've not got your daily fix of whatever it is you're addicted to, the symptoms typically get worse. Just have a cup of coffee in the morning and you're fine. I personally find that this is, for me, a problem only on the full fast days, Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. On the short fast days like tomorrow, just to go a day without caffeine for me is not a problem. But on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, if I don't get my fix, I feel weak, I feel headaches, and that's bad. What I personally do is beginning well before Yom Kippur, typically on Tzom Gedalia, the day after Rosh Hashanah, And on Rosh Chodesh Av, I go on the wagon, I slowly wean myself off of caffeine so that when Yom Kippur comes, when Tisha B'Av comes, I'm clean and I can eat, make it through the day easily without experiencing withdrawal symptoms. And for some reason, I've never clearly understood. I tend to fall off the wagon a few weeks after that, but that's another problem we can discuss at another time. What about someone who is addicted to caffeine and without the caffeine fix, you're really going to feel bad? It could be some other substance, like whatever your substance is. The same rules apply. We have a tshuva of Rabbi Yecheskel Rata. He was the Satmar Rav, the posek of the Satmar community, and he says, Adam shesovel ma'od chalishis alev. People who really feel bad, kav rosh, headache, be'im eno shoteh kava baboker, if you don't have your morning coffee, be'et kumo, when you wake up and get out of bed, if you don't have your morning fix, you really feel bad. What can they do on the fast day? How can you swallow caffeine in order to eliminate the withdrawal symptoms? Tshuva. Well, here's what you should do. Someone who feels bad because he or she is experiencing withdrawal symptoms, that person is halachically sick. Now, of course, from the medical point of view, this is not true at all. From the medical point of view, it's just withdrawal symptoms. He was sick. He or she was sick before taking the addicting substance. From the medical point of view, it's a good thing to withdraw, but you feel bad, and the experience of feeling bad makes you halachically sick, even though the physician would say there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. And that's a general rule, incidentally, which applies not only in this case, but throughout the length and breadth of halacha. Someone who feels sick, weakness, this kind of ache, that kind of ache, has the halachic status of being sick, even though there's no medical issue at all. This is exactly what we saw a few minutes ago when we were talking about pregnant women and nursing mothers. From the medical point of view, a woman can be perfectly healthy and just experiencing the perfectly normal experiences of pregnancy, this kind of ache, that kind of pain, weakness. Well, halachically speaking, that woman is sick, and the leniencies of the illness apply to that woman. Mikevan sheyesh lo chalishis, someone who experiences weakness is halachically sick, even though from the medical point of view, there might be nothing wrong with the person. And this is what it says in the Shulchan Aruch as far as eating before davening in the morning. You're not supposed to eat or drink anything before davening in the morning. Oh, but if having something to eat, what the Chabad Hasidim call cake seder, if having something to eat and drink before davening, if that's going to give you more energy, so that you'll be able to daven better, Shulchan Aruch says, go for it. Just like feeling weak before davening permits eating and drinking before davening, similarly, on fast days, feeling weak permits eating and drinking. Hevan darafua mar. In this particular case, there's very clear reason for leniency. Coffee is bitter. Coffee is bitter. Coffee by itself, a roasted coffee bean all the more so a raw coffee bean, doesn't taste good. It's very bitter. And therefore, here we have a way of swallowing caffeine without, halachically speaking, eating. It's not called an act of eating because it's bitter and unpleasant. Try to swallow the coffee in a way that it's bitter, but without sugar, without milk. Ulam afi mariris b'shtiyasel, ein ze bechlal mashkin hamarim. But the way people normally brew coffee, it has bitterness. It is bitter, but people find it pleasurable. Black coffee without sugar, and ordinary brewed coffee is not bitter enough to fall into the category of not being an act of drinking. Just leaving out the sugar is not enough to cancel the status of the cup of coffee as an ordinary beverage. Therefore, what should you do if you need a cup of coffee? Make the coffee very strong. Make it very strong. If you use instant, put in a lot of instant powder. If you brew the coffee, put in a lot of coffee. Make it very strong. If you make the coffee very strong, now it's going to be bitter. And the coffee is going to be so bitter that you only want to drink a little bit of it. But a little bit of it is going to have a lot of caffeine, and that will eliminate your withdrawal symptoms. And that's called Edo Ro'ui. You don't normally drink the coffee so strong, and that's not Darchayu, that's not the normal derech of drinking it. Make it so concentrated. Make the coffee so strong that you would normally not drink it that way, and you can get your caffeine fix. Also, just as a suggestion for an added chumrah here, drink only a sip at a time, less than a revius at less than a malon lugmav, less than a mouthful at a time. That would be a nice chumrah also. Pasha to gavna lo yivarech, and when you drink the coffee, you don't make a bracha, because you've made the coffee either by brewing it or by adding coffee powder. You've made it so strong that you would not normally drink it that way, and therefore it no longer has the status of a beverage. It's only medicine for you. Medicine in the sense that it's going to relieve you of your withdrawal symptoms. The idea extends a little bit more. If you're swallowing something only for medical reasons, then no bracha attaches to it, surely. If you're going to swallow a pill, a capsule, a tablet, some syrup, medical syrup for this or that, no bracha is to be recited, because this is not actually an act of eating. Now, even if the pill, the tablet, the syrup, even if it's mixed with sugar or other good tasting stuff, the good tasting stuff which is added to the medicine is insignificant and added only for the benefit of the medicine. Since the medicine does not call for a bracha, the added stuff, which is added to make it more palatable, also does not call for a bracha. And therefore, even if the medical tablet is to be chewed or slowly dissolved in your mouth and has good taste added to it to make it more palatable for chewing or slowly dissolving in your mouth, no bracha is to be called for in this case. The sugar or the good tasting stuff added is still not considered an act of eating. Up to this point, we know the general rules, and we know what to do for people who have this or that habituation on oh, I should have mentioned it's it's such an unpleasant topic, but we should mention it anyway for the sake of completeness. There are people out there who smoke tobacco products. I know we're not allowed to talk about other leaves which people smoke. So, but there are people who smoke tobacco leaves. I know it's disgusting. I know it's repellent, and I know that we don't do it. But there are people out there who do. I've read about this in the New York Times, so I know it's true. Wow. Is one allowed to smoke on a fast day? On Yom Kippur, obviously not, because of the fire. You're not allowed to use fire on Yom Kippur. But what about tomorrow? Is smoking permitted? Well, someone who has a prescription for medical marijuana and is smoking a joint for medical purposes to relieve this discomfort or that discomfort. The question is this considered an act of eating or drinking? In Arabic, the word for tobacco is dukhan. Dukhan is the ordinary Arabic word for tobacco. And to smoke tobacco, whether it's with a nargila or ordinary cigarette or pipe or whatever. The Arabic word is shariba. Shariba dukhan, to smoke tobacco. Shariba dukhanan. Now, shariba, as I'm sure you've noticed, is also the ordinary Arabic word for drink. As you see on the advertisements, ishrib Coca-Cola, drink Coca-Cola, ishrib. Shariba is the Arabic root meaning to drink. So in Arabic, one says to drink tobacco smoke. That's the ordinary Arabic expression. Shariba, to drink. Dukhan, to drink tobacco smoke. So it's not surprising that in the old Ottoman Empire, in Arabic-speaking countries, it's not surprising that many rabbis were asked, are you allowed, sharriba dukhanan, are you allowed to drink tobacco smoke on fast days? It's a perfectly reasonable question in the Arabic language. In European languages, the question doesn't make very much sense, and in European countries, the question was never asked. I mean, people just quite correctly assumed that they are permitted to smoke. In the Ottoman Empire, the Rabbanim have many tshuvas on the issue, in which they all come to the same conclusion that smoking is not actually drinking; it's just called drinking in Arabic, but it's not actually an act of drinking, and therefore you are allowed to smoke your medical marijuana on fast day. And if we're talking about tobacco, and you are addicted, well, not you, of course, someone out there is addicted, habituated to the nicotine in the cigarette, and is going to experience withdrawal symptoms if they don't get their daily fix of nicotine. Simple advice would be to go to a pharmacy and get a nicotine patch, which can be applied to the skin, and you can absorb the nicotine transdermally, and that should deal with your withdrawal symptoms. But if for some reason that's impossible or impractical, smoking then becomes permissible because you're feeling bad with your withdrawal symptoms, and this will make you feel better. Now, that's enough about medical issues. Now we're going to speak specifically about women fasting during tomorrow and the other fast days, not Yom Kippur. That's a separate discussion. Hakol chayvim litanot arba tzomot. The 4 fast days aside from Yom Kippur, everyone has to fast, and you're not allowed to violate this. The Ramah says, Mihu, however, ubrota minikot shemitzdarot harbe. However, pregnant women and nursing mothers who are suffering a lot, ein litanot, they should not fast. Afilu einan mitzdarot, even if they're not suffering a lot, einan chayavot litanot, they're not obligated to fast. But many of the women, if they're not suffering, if they're pregnant or nursing, many of them, in fact, are fasting, and that's okay to be machmir. But that's only on the other fast days, not on Yom Kippur, and Tisha B'Av we'll leave for another discussion. Mishnah Brura says, Nashim nahagu lachmir. Well, what did the Ramah mean in the Shulchan Aruch when he said that women who are pregnant or nursing are actually fasting? In fact, they're fasting if they don't suffer a lot. Im hem chalushot, if they're weak, near the ein lem lachmir, if they experience weakness, which is a normal thing for pregnant women, if they experience weakness, then they should not be strict. In any event, hatzarich lechol lo yitaneg atzmo b'asa b'yayin. But of course, as we saw on previous screen, a person who is eating and drinking on the fast day should only eat and drink simple things and not delicacies. Reb Shlomo Carlebach said, "Le'inyan nashim." As far as women are concerned, Reb Shlomo Carlebach used to say, he customarily said, "Minhag b'mekomotenu," here in Yerushalayim, the common practice is, "Nashim einan mitanot klal." Women do not fast at all. The common practice here in Yerushalayim is women do not fast on the minor fast days. Af ne'arot, even unmarried girls, teenagers, even unmarried girls, not Tisha B'Av for Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, of course, they fast, and again, Tisha B'Av will be a separate discussion. But as far as tomorrow's fast is concerned, Reb Shlomo Zalman used to always say, here in Yerushalayim, women do not fast on Ta'anit Esther, on the fast day tomorrow. This is a leniency which pertains to women and not to men. Ta'anit Esther yoter, and Ta'anit Esther is the least strict, the most lenient of the fast days, and therefore he used to instruct women not to fast at all, whether or not they're pregnant, just not to do it. The Evan Yisrael, written by Diane Fisher. Diane Fisher was one of the Dayanim. He was the Rosh Av Bet Din, the Eda Charedit, the Mesharim, and he was the Litvak. As you, I'm sure, know, the Eda Charedit in Mea Sha'arim is dominated almost entirely by Hungarian Hasidim. It's so okay. Here goes. There's a lot of money involved, tons and tons of money involved. The Eda Charedis, like every other Jewish organization everywhere in the world, needs a lot of money to cover their budget. And they have a huge budget. They support a lot of families. Where does the money come from? One of the principal sources of income for the Eda Charedis is what they charge for their hechsher. The hechsher, they're big business. Tons of money flow in to the Eda Charedis because of the hechsher they give. And for some business reason, I don't know a whole lot about business, But to get a hechsher of the Eda Haredis, kosher Pesach, costs more than kosher Kol Hashana. And indeed, you've probably noticed on many labels on products which have the hechsher of the Eda Haredis, kasher Kol Hashana chutz mepesach means they did either the product has kitniot in it and really, or chametz and really isn't kosher Pesach, or they just didn't pay the extra to get the hechsher for Pesach. In any event, the Pesach hechsher is financially very important for the stability of the Eda Haredis. This covers a significant part of their yearly budget. Now, you probably know, I'm sure you know, that there's this big controversy out there regarding machine-made matzahs. Some great rabbis, among them the Hungarian Hasidim, absolutely, totally, and completely reject machine-made matzot for Pesach. Other great rabbis out there, principally those of Lithuanian orientation, have no particular objection, to machine-made matzot, as long as they're very careful in how they make them. And therefore, the Eda Haredit in Mea She'arim, which is dominated by Hungarian Hasidim, always needs one Litvish Rav as a member of the Bet Din who can sign on the hechsher, on the certificates for the machine-made matzahs. Back in the days of Diane Fisher, he passed away in the 1980s. He was it. And then after him, they took Reb Moshe Sternbuch as the Lithuanian Rav who could sign on the kashrus of the machine-made matzahs. In any event, he was ahead of the Bezdin for many, many years. He wrote the Ubarot, pregnant women, Minikot, nursing mothers, Pturot Milhitanot, should not fast at all. Isha shehi tzricha l'tapel b'yeladim ketanim. Any woman who has small children at home, or who is employed to take care of small children, b'vadai p'tura mishlosh tanyon, surely should not fast tomorrow. B'kol shekain, all the more so. Isha acharei leida, all the more so. A woman after giving birth, ad kechodesh, p'turot mishlosh tanyon, surely for a full month, at least for a month after giving birth, women are exempt from fasting. Zero din menikot she'nisk b'chazal. That's what Chazal meant when they speak about pregnant nursing mothers being exempt. Bottom line, Reb Shlomo Carlebach, Diane Fisher, who were great rabbanim of Yerushalayim, are in agreement that great leniencies apply for women. Reb Moshe Sternbuch, who is the current Lithuanian Dayan, Rosh Av Bezdin in the Eda Haredis, he's originally from England. Nashim Shalana, women nowadays, lo nahagul hitanot shechalushot hen b'yachas l'dorot ha'kodmim. Unlike in previous generations, who were stronger and vigorous, our women today are relatively chalush, relatively weak. Nowadays, women do not fast. Mishnah Berurah says, "Im margeshet chulsha." Mishnah Berurah says, a woman who experiences some weakness should not fast. Kach shamati megdolei olam she'ein lechayev nashim b'tzeh hayom. Nowadays, all women experience some weakness if they fast, and therefore they shouldn't fast at all. Bottom line, it's a common line of thinking amongst the great Lithuanian poskim that women should not fast during the minor fast days, including tomorrow. Okay, these are the principal sources on the issue, and now I'm ready for any questions you might have.
I have a question. Are you allowed to brush your teeth? Can you brush your teeth if you feel that it's really, I mean, except for Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, obviously, but is there a
It's
possibility that you
simple
could?
answer. According to the Mishnah Berurah, the simple answer to your question is it permitted or prohibited to brush your teeth? According to Mishnah Berurah and all the other great poskim, permitted. Nonetheless, Mishnah Berurah says, nohagim. It's a minhag not to wash the mouth, not to rinse the mouth. Therefore, as long as you're not suffering, and indeed you might, then you should avoid doing it.
Same thing about a shower, like that avoids the mouth, you know.
Yeah, keep your mouth closed if you take a shower, which I suppose is in general good advice. Okay. Other questions? Yes.
I wanted to know when you're talking about making an extra bitter coffee, when you're talking about you wouldn't bless on even if there were good components. So would one drink water after, because it's like it would be a horrible, horrible taste and a horrible everything.
Yes, yes. One can then drink water after to wash the bad taste out of the mouth. Yes. And no breath on the water.
Interesting. Cool.
Because theoretically, this person would be in the chole category. Would they just do that and then fast the rest of the day and just do that as the medicine and then?
Yeah. Now, of course, the question arises how concentrated the coffee has to be. I visited once for one day in Miami. Miami is in Florida. It's at the southeastern corner of North America. And fortunately, I can speak Spanish. Otherwise, I'd still be lost. It didn't take me long to discover that not only is Spanish essential in Miami, but almost everyone is speaking with a Cuban accent. Now, if you go into a cafe and the second language I discovered in Miami, if you walk along the beach, at least the beaches I walked along had signs in Spanish, of course, and the second language was Yiddish. The signs were Yiddish. Not surprisingly, since the secondary language of the signs is Yiddish, not surprisingly, there are many kosher cafes in Miami, and also not surprisingly, the kosher cafes are mostly run by Cubans. And buying a cup of coffee in a Cuban cafe turns out to be a complicated matter, at least as complicated as Starbucks. One of the forms, one of the things, what you can order is un americano. If you tell the barista that you want un americano, then you get a tiny cup of coffee, a very tiny cup, like a shot glass size, of very concentrated coffee. And it gets downed in one gulp. And since this is derech shtia, the way they ordinarily drink coffee, you can order it in any Cuban cafe. For the ta'anit, it has to be stronger than that.
And that's stronger than normal espresso, you're saying?
Oh yes, much stronger than normal espresso. That's why it's served only in these very small shot cups.
So you got to pour out a lot of coffee into this cup in order to make it.
Okay. So next time you're visiting by your Cuban friends, you can ask if they can prepare you un americano.
Yeah.
Of course, in Spanish, in English, only people from the United States call themselves Americans. But in Spanish, anyone from North, Central, or South America is called Americano. in Spanish. As for some reason, the South Americans, Spanish-speaking people, and Portuguese as well, for some reason, they think they are Americano also.
Speaking of the Cuban coffee, I suppose if someone really just tastes the sweet coffee, that which theirs is very, very sweet, then would that fit the category of being able to have it because it's like it's
Sweet.
not Maria, but it's
Too
almost,
sweet.
yeah. It's theoretical, so you don't actually have to answer it.
Yeah, yes. In principle, yes, yes. But at the moment, I don't know how to judge the degree of sweetness necessary for this. But in principle, yes. Okay, that's it for today. Yes,
So,
Jody?
It's completely unrelated.
Yes, Jody.
I'm asking for a friend, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, if you buy something from a store, you have the receipt, you haven't used it, and it goes on sale. Can you return the item that you bought and repurchase it or purchase the same one again? Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or on the sale.
Yes, so sort of like what the tax authorities call a wash sale. Yes, you can do it if the store if the store policy allows it, go for it.
No problem.
No problem.
Thank you. And also, I'm sorry, I missed the answer to Nava's question about brushing teeth.
The halacha is permitted. Nonetheless, the Mishnah Berurah says there's a minhag on tomorrow's fast day not to wash or rinse the mouth, and therefore one should refrain from brushing the teeth. One should refrain from brushing or rinsing the mouth unless you really feel bad about it. If you're mistaker, if you're suffering from it, then it's okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, I wish you all then an easy fast and a Purim Sameach. Next week, okay, we should have class as usual next week. It'll be the day after Purim, the Purim itself. Look forward to seeing you then again next week.
And Purim Sameach, good Purim, Talmid Simchat. And it's a happy fast.
Indeed.
You will all.